be able to help him? Yo, was in my bag and in my duffel now. And if homie music dope, I got a couple pounds. Bust them down, hit the town, do my hustle round. Spin the block, throw it in the pot, watch it bubble down. I'm on my Wu-Tang. Guard body, palm shotties for the Wu-Tang clips. Off the radar, fuck a hater, cause some dudes ain't rich in the spirit, so I'm screaming out, who ain't rich? I'm from the island, not the Staten when it's real out.
Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are across the globe. Welcome to On the Sofa with yours truly, Esther Austin. Well, today with me, I have another incredible individual to talk to. We're going to have lots of great conversating, and his name is Ajene Watson, and he's an entrepreneur. He's many things. I mean, I was trying to pick out, how do I introduce him? Because there's so many things to this gentleman. But before we go any further, I'm going to ask Ajene, who are you in a nutshell? In a peanut shell. You've seen this in my other interviews, haven't you?
I've seen it, yeah.
or what are you, coconut or crab?
A coconut shell or a lobster shell, crab shell?
Crab shell. Yeah, that's right. So who is Ajene Watson?
It's funny, I was trying to think of something cool to say when you asked me that question, but I don't have it.
Yeah.
No, I think Jenny Watson, I'm a gentleman who believes in equitability, who strives to be a better person today than I was yesterday, who wants to positively impact and influence our society, our culture, our communities in a meaningful way, despite my own flaws and shortcomings. Born and raised in the Bronx, New York, United States, the home of hip hop, if you will.
Oh wow!
That's a big point for me. I like you said, I don't normally talk to people and say I'm an entrepreneur. I work in the financial services industry. I was recruited in 2001 into the financial services industry. I began my career while I was still in high school. I was a commercial real estate appraiser. I did that for some time. I moved through the entertainment industry in the street promotions, radio promotions, things of club promotions, things of that nature, management. I was the president of an independent record label. But still, somewhere along the line, I really gravitated towards a different type of business, looking to control the means of production. So that led me to the financial services industry. And I've been doing that pretty much ever since, but in a non-traditional way, right? I don't have a traditional background, a traditional education, a traditional, stepping my way through the financial community, don't have the same network. So, but I'm a guy that, literally took his own path, right? I sort of walked in the road and I went straight, as one of our greats would say. So that's who I am, I guess.
Brilliant. And it's really good that it's almost like you took an alternative path, or you just went down the path where you were guided. And I get a sense you just kept on going and it worked for you. And so now you're in a place where you want to give back, you want to share the knowledge, and also tell us a little bit more, because this interview is specifically about one aspect of something that you are working on or that you've created, and that's hip hop. Correct?
Yeah. Yes, that hip hop. Yeah.
Right. So just tell us a little bit more about that, and maybe do it in layman's terms, because I've read your brief and I was a bit sort of like, so.
That's not good. No.
No, but it's good because it means that I want to know more, and you've now got the chance and the opportunity to explain it to me in layman's terms. But it's also what's behind the reason why you're doing this. That's so important. So over to you, Ajene. I like that word, Ajene. Ajene.
Yeah, my grandmother called me Ajene. I prefer Ajene.
Ajene.
If I try to church it up, it's like Ajene. But
that's right. Yes. Ajene. Getting the Holy Spirit would say that, isn't it?
Exactly. But no, I think what is important to know, at least in the trajectory of my career, path has been that when I was recruited into the financial services industry, it was, most of what I did was place money. We focused on placing money, turning over money, so it's sort of what hedge funds do, but in a less sophisticated fashion.
Mm.
And my mother always complained. I was very happy. I thought she'd be happy for me because I was making a lot of money, but for her, money wasn't the end all, and she was actually quite disappointed. Um, and she said I wasn't doing anything useful for society at that time.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so you don't want to disappoint your mom, but you know how it's just like very interesting that that was her come from.
Mm.
And so essentially, in the financial services industry, I focused on the microcap markets, which is stocks that are under 300 million dollars. They normally trade, you know, below $5, below $3. Sometimes they typically stay in the penny stock range, as
Oh,
we will call them. They're the OTC markets, pink sheet markets, things like that. Um, and so we would put money into these companies, and at the time, we didn't really care. It wasn't my job to care about whether that company survived at that time. It was to turn the money, and that it was a big issue for her. So when she passed away in 2007, I had made this conscious decision to, honor her by doing something different inside of the career, but doing something different. And that was to try to help the companies
mm.
that we were funding. So as I got into doing that, helping the companies, I realized that we had this battle, not just between good and evil, but there was the companies. Some of them were crappy companies or crappy CEOs, crappy executives. Some of them are really good. Then we
Mm.
had these big investors, and some of them just took advantage of the company and took advantage of the loopholes in the law. And then we had all these everyday people that were looking for an opportunity to have a come up, to that wanted to invest $10, $100, and you know make 1,000, make 50,000, whatever, right? And my concern started to really lean toward that everyday investor and constantly trying to figure out, how do I make this environment work for them?
Mm.
So years and years go by, and I'm learning more of how to make the world work for the entrepreneur, the executives, how to make it work for these investors, the big investors, and in trying to cultivate and create really good companies, solid companies that would lead to investments that people would make that they could feel good about. There would be slow growth. They may not, run from 10 cents to $2 overnight, but they
Mm.
would, grow over time. And I thought that that was good. But the challenge still was that they weren't getting in early enough. So when you think about all of the people that made a crap ton of money on the Ubers or on the Snapchats or,
Yeah, yeah.
any of these major companies, they got in super, super early, like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, before anyone knew what the company was. And, here in America, at least, there are literally rules that box poor Americans in to where they can't invest early. And so it's kind of like it kept, the 99%, as we call them, kept them down, right?
Mm.
No matter what ethnicity they were, no matter what religion they were, if you weren't part of the 1%, you were part of the 99%. So in came the Jobs Act, which allowed the 99% to now suddenly participate in early investments, but in this weird haphazard way where it became like a lottery ticket. You can invest in any company that's in on any one of these platforms, and that didn't make any sense. So I decided to, from there, we're going to launch a company called Digital Asset Monetary Network. We're going to create a model that educates the entrepreneurs, educates the investors, marries them. Everyone is now more financially literate,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're an entrepreneur trying to raise money, you still need to have some financial literacy. If
Mm-hmm.
you're an everyday person that didn't even know you can invest yesterday,
Mm.
you just because you have an opportunity doesn't mean you should take it. You need to understand it, understand what you're looking at, understand how to read the financials. So we wanted to be able to create that environment and then bring people together and let them make good decisions or better decisions. But because I'm in the microcap space, I decided to do it as a microcap company, so I can also give those type of investors access to an inexpensive security or environment, investment environment where they can actually make money from what we're building. So along the way, as I'm building this doing all this R&D, we acquire different assets. We in testing the model, we acquire assets, and just trying to build shareholder value, we acquire assets. So we get to see a lot of different companies. So a lot of opportunities come our way, and that leads us to where one day I'm sitting at home minding my business, and I get this series of phone calls about, you really need to get on the phone because there's a deal that you gotta take. And the guy he explained it. He's one of my advisors, one of my favorite advisors. He was explaining it, didn't understand it. So I jump on the phone, and there's this group of gentlemen on the line, and they start talking to me about the domaining space, which is like domain names, right? Like Esther.com or
Yes.
All the
TV.com or Turning Point. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So they start talking to me about this, and I'm like, guys, I don't know what you're talking about. And I run I'm executive at a public company. I try not to make arbitrary, unilateral decisions. So I might have to pass on this. And then they mentioned the TLD is called hip hop. Now, mind you, I didn't know what a TLD was. So TLDs are, as you know them, .coms, .biz, .us, .club, .inc, whatever it is, right? So it's what's right of the dot. In order to have a website or web presence, you have to have what's left of the dot, which could be agene.com.
Yes.
Agene, Esther, like we said, or a digital asset monetary network, whatever's left of the dot, and then right of the dot, it would be a .com, it would be a .biz, it would be a .org, a .edu. Those are called TLDs. And if you think about it, like digital real estate, you all this land, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you go and you buy your plot of land, which is Esther.com, and you build it up to it has a potential value of, you buy it for $20, but it has a potential value of 100 or 1,000, 10,000. I was in an auction where my partner auctioned a name for $200,000+, right?
How do you build up? Where do you get the value from that to build it up?
The value is intrinsic, is I should say more inherent in what the name means to somebody, and the value that so it's either what the name means to somebody or the value that you build in it. So for example, a colleague of mine purchased merch.hiphop. So in 2 years from now, .hiphop becomes, really known amongst the hip hop community, the culture, the global culture of hip hop. And I don't know, just say Adidas comes and says, you know what, that merch.hiphop is going to be great for us to have. People will come, or Live Nation, let's get that merch.hiphop. My colleague bought it for $600. They offer him 10,000. They offer him 100,000 because merch.hiphop, because the entire real estate value of .hiphops is so strong at that point, and merch means, I'm selling whatever merchandise, in the hip hop culture, they're willing to pay him an obscene amount of money for it. That's one way that the value is there. It's just been, buying land in the middle of nowhere, and then as people start to create the oasis, it becomes valuable. Or my colleague can start selling, do drop shipping and building his merch dot hip hop into a valuable asset. He has it on Shopify, and now it's worth millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And he can sell that name, right? So there's different ways you can build up the value of an asset. Sometimes it's just as simple as having a name that means something to somebody. VIP.hip hop, um, I don't know, NFT.hip hop, 4040 club.hip hop, like whatever the name is that makes sense to that extension. So that's what the hip hop is. And I just felt that I listened to a podcast with Kaz, Grandmaster Kaz. He was on Drink Champs, and Nori asked people, "Did you think hip hop could make it this far? Would make it this far?" And he said, "I always thought it could, but I didn't know it would do this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have trademarked it or something, right?" And I said to myself, I'm like, well, here is our opportunity. I'm going to go ahead, get involved in a business I have no idea about, an industry I have no idea about. I just know that the people that were on the phone had tremendous backgrounds because I had to jump off and look them up very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I literally did that deal at 2:30 in the morning, from 11:30 at night, closed it out at 2:30 in the morning. And now, our company, Digital Asset Monetary Network, we call it Digital AMN, has the principal interest we have another principal partner called Right of the Dot, or Khan and Associates. And, my ambition is to take dot hip hop and give it back to the hip hop community, to give it to the culture, so that people tend to think of hip hop as black and brown.
Mm.
Perhaps on the largest scale, but hip hop has transcended, communities and cultures and ethnicities and religions and everything. So, I just want the whole culture of hip hop to have it. But of course, in terms of equitability, it should start in the Bronx. It should start in the U.S. and build its way out, which might
the home of
might conceivably be black and brown. Yeah.
Mm. So when you said you want to give it back, just so that I get a wide understanding of that. So you've got the domain, and so in the giving
the TLD.
TLD, yeah, sorry,
it's
TLD.
Top level. It's called the top level domain. Yes.
Yeah. So in having that, then how, just help me to understand, how will you be giving it back? Is it that is it a bit like a legacy holding thing, or how will you be giving it back to the community? How does that, what does that look like?
Oh, simply ownership is power. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest reasons why we get trampled on in every line, path in life, or lane in life, is because we don't own the means of production. We're always the product, the result of that production, but we don't own the means. And in this case, the TLD itself is the means. When you look at having a web presence, especially going into Web3, if and when that officially happens, using crypto, using NFTs, things of that nature, we should own our presence in that space. So when I say giving it back, I mean, I want the culture to actually literally own it. So instead of me going to my everyday investors, who the majority of them aren't black and brown to begin with, but instead of me going to my usual investors and getting the capital to build this thing, I'm literally building an environment where I can go into the community, which is something what Digital Asset Monetary Network is about to begin with. It's about the financial literacy and creating that bridge between investor and entrepreneur. So I'm going back into the community using a model that we've been designing and saying, hey, I would like for you guys to own it. So for example, we've carved out 5% to start. And we're bringing in mostly, a big portion of the people that are participating are non-accredited investors, which was very important. Then you have the accredited investors, and they're the first group to come in at our 5% carve out, and the majority of those people are Black and brown. And
Mm.
again, the importance of dot hip hop being owned by uh, Black and brown, and then the hip hop culture is extremely important. My partners, our partners, the organizations that owned dot hip hop originally aren't ran by people, ethnic people. They're white Americans. They're great, and they understand the plight, and they understand why it was important for us to make this adjustment to give it back to the community. At least let them have an opportunity, whether or not the community takes advantage of that would be up to them. And that's my ambition, is to make that happen. That they seize the opportunity, and it starts with this brain trust that we create. Uh, it's called Dot Hip Hop Partners. Um, they start with the first carve out of 5%. They then create a brain trust, and we rely on that brain trust to tell us what's hip hop, what's not, what's cool, what's not. Like
Yeah.
having one Black guy in the business doesn't make it hip hop. You have to have a community of people to tell us, especially when you're talking about, you know, 50 years of hip hop next year.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
That's a long span. Some of the people that have joined the hip hop partners that are part of the Brain Trust, they have grandkids at this point. So there's so many elements and style of hip hop. It's important that we had that participation, and I'm hoping that that participation grows from 60 to 100 to 1,000 to tens of thousands to a DAO in the Web3, where there's millions of people participating in that DAO. And if you know anything, not you per se, but when people,
No.
those that know anything about Web3 environments, they know that those creating the DAO, creating an environment where they control
Mm.
everything. I mean, a it's presumably worth a crap ton of money to the community, and it would change the narrative, right? We want to go from being that label of, oh, they spend $2 billion a year, and they have $2 billion a year, 3 billion in buying power, whatever that statistic is. Don't quote me on that.
Mm.
But whatever that number is, I prefer to be said they have $2 billion of negotiating power, because we have crafted ourselves in such a way where now we go to a Goldman Sachs and says, hey, that 2 billion, here's that $2 billion, manage it for us. Because we restructure and retell that narrative, and that comes with ownership. So
Mm.
that's why, again, I jumped into dot hip hop because I was just like, I'm not going to be that guy that let hip hop
Wanna
get
be-
away.
And also, you want to sort of walk your talk as well. And if it takes, like you said, it's a community because, I am actually, it's interesting how this year I've been thrown into the hip hop world more and more. And what I see and what I sense about it is, like you said, it's a culture, but it's a lifestyle. It's almost like family. Because I was in Germany in, I think it was June or July at a hip hop festival. And um, and then recently, like I said, there was a gentleman from Philadelphia. He was here last week, and it's such a, it's such a connectivity. It's such a coming together. It's so many things. It's a lifestyle. And
Mhm.
like you said, if they take ownership of something that then becomes a legacy, but also is about wealth creation and building wealth generationally, that then puts the community onto the ladder,
Yes, yes, ma'am, absolutely.
onto the
That's
ladder.
the key.
And so if someone I mean, so what are you? So if someone contacted you, wanted to know more about this, what is the process?
I
Or
mean, it. So it's interesting because if we say what's the end goal of dot hip hop as a registry, right? So dot hip hop LLC is what is responsible for building out dot hip hop, like period HIP HOP, right? Dot hip hop, like dot com, but dot hip hop. The primary thing, of course, is to have a dot hip hop. Yeah. If you're a dancer, if you're a singer, if you're a rapper, if you're a fashion designer, if you're a record company, if you're in anywhere in the 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 culture of hip hop, it doesn't matter if you're a doctor or a lawyer or a plumber, what have you. If you're anywhere in the culture of hip hop, then you might want to really consider having a dot hip hop presence online, right? Now that's one person. Sorry, that's one person. If you are a speculator, or maybe you don't even know you're a speculator, but let me put you on to something. I was doing I had a panel discussion in Austin at NamesCon, and the host, the moderator, was telling us about a gentleman who paid $2,000 for a domain name, a couple $1,000, whatever it was, and he sold it for like $48,000 a year or two later. Now think about the ROI on that, and
return on interest, Pete's return on interest. Even I know that.
Return on investment.
Investment. Apologies.
So the return on investment is ridiculous. And the thing is that could have been on a .com, that could have been on a .club, that could have been on a .law. I don't know what it was on. I know that same person bought 2 domain names from .hip hop, and he told me, he whispered in my ear, I got a good feeling about these names. That means he has a good feeling about that hip hop. But the point there is that there's a whole nother side to people that buy domain names. Those are the investors. Those are the people that look at it as digital real estate. The same way you go and you prospect a property that's just land or a building in a crappy neighborhood that you think someone's going to come build around. You go ahead, people buy and sell domain names all day long, all day, every day. I was shocked by it. I had already entered the domaining industry. I had been in there for a year because I jumped into this deal in 2021, and I just really understood the magnitude of that piece 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and I was like shocked to understand, really get the full breadth of how much money is made in buying and selling domain names that you could literally pick up for $20 in some cases, right? You never know which one of those names are going to be. So who better to buy hip hop real estate
than the hip hop community,
hip hop culture, right? Yeah. We know what names are going to be valuable, because if we don't do it, all of those domainers that were in that room, eventually, when hip hop starts to become the phenomenon that the rest of hip hop is, they're going to own that too. What? Yeah. That's like crazy. Like, why? So I think that when people call us, they should be, I'm looking for people that I'm hoping that people want to contact us. They can go to get.hiphop, get.hiphop, and they could go to get.hiphop, learn more about domains, about our domain, about registries, and then they can see where they can buy a domain name. A lot of times people will buy, a lot of people go to GoDaddy. That's like kind of instinctual. We're not carried by GoDaddy at this point. We're on like, you have to go to Namecheap or Pork Bun, things like that. But eventually, we'll be carried by everybody. But that's the first thing. We want people to get their badge of representation, and that's hip hop. Then I want people to pay attention. As we are doing more outreach and we're leveraging the Jobs Act. The Jobs Act covers Reg D, Reg A plus, Reg CF, equity crowdfunding. As we're leveraging those opportunities that let everyday people in, I need people to pay attention, because that is their opportunity to own this, right? And the reason why we're going these routes is to make sure that we own it. Otherwise, we're going to be cut out again. And that's not what we're trying to do. So those are the opportunities, go to get.hiphop, get your domain name either for yourself because you're building something on it or for speculation to as an investment. And just pay attention to the opportunities to participate when, as an owner or in the brain trust as they come about, because we are building a brain trust. We want everyone to participate in, from the South to Germany, like you said, to,
Yes.
the Europe, wherever, because not hip hop is not the same everywhere. So that hip hop and all the things we do have to be a representation of the entire community, especially for the 50th anniversary. That's next year on my birthday, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually born on the birthday of hip hop, which also made it, more of a like a fate type of thing that I participate. That I did this.
But also, you're doing something to fulfill your mother's wishes as well. It's a combination of everything at once, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I guess because you've been, you are one of the messengers to make it happen or to bring awareness over that. So it's almost like, that 3-in-1, bringing awareness, your birthday's on the date of hip hop, and also fulfilling your mother's wishes. The power of three, so to speak. So yeah,
That's
see?
interesting. Yeah, didn't
Yeah,
think of it that way. That's what
yeah,
happens when I'm hanging out with Esther. I know that you and Chase were about to go down that scientific road in one of your earlier interviews. So yeah.
yeah. There's thing is we can elaborate. It could be parts one, part two, part three of these types of conversations, especially when it's about raising up the community, so that they, like you said, it's all about ownership as well. That is so key.
Yep.
Ownership and legacy.
Ownership and legacy, generational wealth comes
Generational-
from that legacy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's been a pleasure talking to you because I understand it more now that you've explained it this way. Because I was reading some, like I said, I was like boss-eyed and cross-eyed and everything, but I understand.
No problem. No
I've just been
problem.
honest, but
Yeah.
the way you've presented it to me, and I know lots of people, this will be an opening for a lot of people to know that they have the chance as well to get in the door, because a lot of people don't think that they can get in the door to build anything, but how you've presented it and the opportunity that really is there gives people the chance. So that's brilliant on many levels. So I'd like to say thank you so much for your time. And
Thank you for it, Esther. Thank you for your time and
no,
opportunity to be
I've
here.
wanted to do this for so long because especially in these current times when there's so much instability. I mean, there's always instability. It depends on how you perceive it, but there's people are really struggling. I see it out there, and at least this is going to give people hope. I've got a chance. If I've got $10, then I've got a chance with that $10 now, and it's going to be put into a place where, like you said, it's about knowledge and learning, and they will get support to. So all of those things are important. So, ladies and gents, details are going to be put on the end of this interview. I would suggest you take a look. I am going to be, I'm going to be there after this interview, checking it out as well. But also just think about your family, think about longevity, think about generational, and just think about changing things. We have to become the change that we want to see, not just in the world, but in our culture, in our communities.
Within ourselves.
And within ourselves. Yeah. And on that note, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I will definitely be in touch as well because this has really piqued a curiosity in me as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Esther.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Sitting for the van. High 87. Chase Flow. From Charlotte to Spain. You know what the question is? Not why, but why? And don't you ever forget. It's Wu-Tang. Wu-Tang forever.